Leon Rose has spoken just a little bit. We don't generally hear from Leon Rose, president of basketball operations for the New York Knicks, but he's spoken some more. He appeared on the Roommate Show with Josh Hart and Jalen Brunson, and he gave us a little something. We got a little insight into Leon Rose. There was some decent questions, and we got some answers from him. People have been waiting for this. Fans have been waiting for this. Media, we've been waiting for this because we don't get to talk to Leon Rose. So it was actually nice to hear from Leon Rose. So I got to watch the episode. I thought it was pretty good. And I wanted to share my three biggest takeaways from the episode and what we heard, particularly from Leon Rose sitting down with Josh Hart and Jalen Brunson and being able to talk after the Knicks won their first championship in 53 years. And the first thing for me, my first major takeaway from this was Leon Rose talking about his belief in Jalen Brunson. Now, obviously, you think somebody believes in a player when they sign a player, and we know what the Knicks had to do to clear space to get Jalen Brunson a move at the time that was not widely accepted. There was some criticism of it. There were people that thought it was a bad deal, that did not see Jalen Brunson becoming the player that he is now.
And I look at it like he doesn't owe me anything.
Yeah.
I did it because I fully believed in him. This guy, and thought he was that good. And he had put in the work and he had proven himself. It wasn't like, it's just maybe the rest of the world hadn't caught up yet,
Right.
or they didn't have, or the people that were, judging. But, and as your star gets bigger, it gets worse, as far as that. I mean,
It looks,
there's more and more and more. But, until now, and one of the greatest things about this right here is, hey, you can't win with a small guard. I mean, how many times have we heard that over all these years?
A couple times.
That criticism, I think, sometimes was a little bit overblown. But I think the key for me in hearing what he said about believing in Jalen Brunson wasn't just that he believed in Jalen Brunson's talent or saw that he could become one of the best players in the NBA or the best player on a championship team, regardless of size. For me, it was the fact that he believed that Jalen Brunson could handle the pressure of New York. Leon Rose said that himself. He said he was impressed with how Jalen Brunson played when Luka Doncic went out of that playoff run. He had to step up for the Dallas Mavericks against the Utah Jazz in that series, and how impressed he was with Jalen Brunson then. It is one thing to believe in someone's talent. It's another thing to believe in their mentality. And we know this, and when I use the we, I mean New Yorkers, people who have covered the Knicks, people who have worked in the media here in New York. We've seen people who can't handle the pressure. We've seen players come here and try to deliver a championship wearing the orange and blue, wearing the heaviest jersey in the league, and not be able to get it done. So you got to give credit to Leon Rose for seeing that, believing in Jalen Brunson, in that he could handle the pressure of New York, and then investing in him. That's the thing, and being able to put the right pieces around him so that he could accomplish what he accomplished this year in leading the Knicks to a championship. And when you talk about the right pieces around them, that's what brings me to my next major takeaway, because there was some talk about what was the move that Leon Rose got the most flack for. And at first, Leon Rose started talking about him signing Jalen Brunson, which he absolutely did get flack for. And Jalen Brunson asked him, wait, did you get more flack for signing me, or was it more for Mikal Bridges? And then Leon Rose pivoted and said, no, yeah, it was Mikal Bridges.
Doing all the things to get me. You get more flack for that or more flack for Kale?
Oh, more flack for Kale.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
The five draft picks, yeah, absolutely. I got a lot of flack for that.
Very
Right
well.
here, this is proof is in the pudding. Right here, right here. But I mean the Kale thing, got crushed on that one too. But you got to go. And but the thing was, the differences was, this was the first major move, and I had all the conviction in the world with regard. I've known him since he's born. I know what he's all about. I know what a winner he is. I know, that I was willing to ride with him. When we got to Kale was like the last piece that would give us the group, the whole group. We had just re-signed OG that day, and and is when we got the Kale deal done that night. And so, that was like the last one, and probably why, if you want to say it was too many draft picks, it was too many draft picks. But to me, we were trying to get this.
Obviously, for a lot of people, it was the price that the Knicks paid. And look, it was a steep price. There's no doubt about that in 5 first-round picks. And Leon Rose talked about how Mikal was one of the last pieces that he believed would give them the group that could win the championship. And he said, if you want to say it was too many draft picks, then you can say that it was too many draft picks. But the goal was to get this. And he pointed to the championship trophy, the Larry O'Brien trophy that was right next to him to his right. He talked about that. And he also talked about the criticism that Mikal Bridges got. And look, people are going to have revisionist history on this as time goes by and maybe not be as honest about it as they should. But Mikal Bridges, whenever he did not play, whenever he didn't bring it at a certain level, he was criticized. There was criticism from me at times when Mikal Bridges didn't seem to bring it, particularly on the offensive end. And he said it bothered him that Bridges got criticized when he didn't play well. And particularly what he meant was the criticism of how people would bring up the 5 picks, right? You saw a lot of that. People would bring up the 5 picks. Oh, he wasn't worth the 5 picks. It wasn't worth that. And he said, look, it had nothing to do with Mikal. It was the price that talking about Leon Rose, saying that he was willing to pay. And he knew how important it was to get that piece, talking about Mikal Bridges, another two-way wing to solidify this group to win a championship. He said he felt that it was necessary to get Mikal to win the chip. And I think, look, a lot of the criticism that came there was because everyone knew, okay, when you gave the 5 picks up for Mikal Bridges, this was really the last big move that they could make. I understand that Cat came after right before training camp last season, but Mikal and the price that it cost to get Mikal from the Nets really is where the Knicks went all in. There were no more big moves for them to make. That really wasn't going to happen. So to hear Leon Rose talk about it and how he was aware of the flack that he got and understands the pressure of making the moves that he had to make in New York, but he still had the conviction to believe in the process and the way he wanted to shape the team. I thought it was really interesting because you also heard him talk about some smaller moves, whether you want to talk about OG Anunoby and how he really had a mindset of this kind of team that he wanted to build around Jalen Brunson, even going to get Karl Anthony Towns after the Knicks had lost Isaiah Hartenstein earlier that offseason, how important it was. They knew they had a bit of a roster imbalance and they needed to shore things up at the center position. So Leon Rose, you can tell, always had a vision. He clearly was aware of the criticism and the flack that he got for some of these moves, but he definitely believed, not just, as I said at the top, in Jalen Brunson and his ability to handle the pressure in New York, but he really believed that these were the pieces he needed. And Mikal Bridges was that kind of final wing piece that could get the Knicks to the championship. And look, he was right. And there's going to be a lot of talk from fans from years. You're going to see the F them pick shirts and all that stuff. And ain't nobody going to care about those picks anymore because the Knicks got what they wanted and Leon Rose accomplished what he set out to accomplish, which was win a championship. And then the last thing for me that Leon Rose talked about that I thought was pretty interesting, and I was wondering if he would talk about it on the Roommate Show, was the changing of head coaches. He talked about how it was a tough decision to change head coaches from Tom Thibodeau to Mike Brown. But he said it felt as though the organization, the team needed a change in voice, a change in philosophy. And he said that Mike Brown really fit what they were looking for. Now, he did acknowledge not that about the process that some felt it was too long. I was not somebody who was caught up in that as much, but he said they had about 5 candidates. They brought them in, they had them all graded out, and Mike Brown checked a lot of the boxes that they wanted. He graded out really well.
We want to talk about, obviously, we made a huge, change in coaches, this past summer. And obviously that was, tough for you, but talk about the process that goes into, changing and finding, a coach that fits the timeline and, the process.
Yeah, it was tough. It was tough. Tibbs is a great coach. Did so much for the organization. We were right on the doorstep and, just felt that just needed change in voice, a change in, philosophy.
And we heard the word collaborative. I think it was like 14 or 17 times, something like that, during Mike Brown's introductory press conference last year. And he said what stuck out to him the most about Mike Brown was his openness and willingness to share ideas and the inclusion of everyone. And I think that the fact that the Knicks recognized that, not just in the hiring process, I want to go a step before that, right? The fact that they recognized that they needed to make a change when they did, when they had Tom Thibodeau, who deserves a lot of credit for getting the Knicks the year before as far as they had been in 25 years, right? And getting them to the conference finals and them being 2 wins away from winning an NBA title. I don't think it was easy, and I've said this before, for them to look and say, oh, yeah, you know what? We needed to make a change here. The easy thing would have been to, yeah, we're going to stick with this. This is the guy that's got us here. We're going to stick with it. This is the way we want to go. But he talked about that openness and willingness to share ideas from Mike Brown. And we saw that all year from Mike Brown. He talked about it. He was always crediting his staff. We know the adjustments he made after game 3 of the first round series against the Atlanta Hawks and totally changing the offense. That's a sure openness and willingness. We know about him revamping the defense and going back to some of the things that the players wanted to do after that 2-9 stretch in January where the Knicks really struggled defensively. And I think that it tells you a lot about how hard it is to build teams in all sports. It is hard to win. And I think that's one of my major takeaways when I take my 3 major takeaways, whether it's talking about Jalen Brunson and handling the pressure of New York, whether it's talking about Leon Rose and the flack that he realized he received for trading for Mikal Bridges and then changing head coaches. The big overall takeaway when you combine all 3 for me is that it's hard to win. And there has to be strong belief in an organization in whatever you do, and there has to be a conviction in what you do, and there also has to be adaptability. There isn't just one way to do things. You can't just be stuck in one way. And Leon Rose wasn't willing to be stuck in one way, and it had to be this way with this coach, with his first hire. He was willing to make change. The players themselves had to be willing to make changes. The front office had to be willing to look at things in different ways. And I think it's a lesson that you can just apply to about anything in life. If you listen to some of the stuff that Leon Rose says, like belief matters a ton, but adaptability matters just as much as you're trying to get to the top. So overall, I thought it was a really interesting interview from Leon Rose. I think all of us in the media, fans, you'd like to hear from Leon Rose a little bit more about the process, especially in this offseason, as the Knicks are trying to defend their title and trying to go back. We'd love to hear about what pieces he thinks he can bring back, what things he can do more. I hope this is the start of something new. I hope this is a situation where Leon Rose might change, policies a little bit, maybe talk to the media more. Who cares? Come on the roommate show a little bit more. We'll take that. Shout out to Josh and Jalen for getting Leon Rose on there. It was a promise. He kept his promise. He showed up after they won, and we got to hear something from the championship man who was the architect behind this Knicks championship in the 2025-2026 season. So yeah, thought it was a pretty good interview. Some interesting things from Leon Rose. Like I said, hopefully we hear more from him and throughout the offseason, but you got to give that man his flowers. You got to give that man credit because the hiring of him at first was even criticized. They didn't even get to that. The hiring of him was criticized, and we know moves were criticized, but he stuck the process and he was willing to take some swings, take some risks, make some moves, and do what he believed was best for the organization. And we'll see if the Knicks can now have sustained success going forward as an organization after they are now the world champions, best team in the NBA. Yeah, so those are my thoughts on the interview that we saw with Leon Rose on the Roommate Show. Thought it was a good one. Like I said, hopefully, we are all hoping we just hear a little bit more from Mr. Leon Rose about his thought process because I thought he had some good things to share. And hopefully he'll share more of that in the future.